But this morning, I want to talk to you on the subject, when adversity strikes. When adversity strikes, it usually comes without warning. In fact, you hardly ever see it coming. Adversity often shows up like an unexpected birthday party. Surprise! And it's there. Just like that, your life can change forever. And adversity can be a setback, an intense pain, physical or emotional. It can be a point of defeat or a crisis that is hard to overcome. It can come in the form of a trial, a hardship. And one of the most important things you need to know about adversity is that, I like the way Charles Stanley puts it. He says, adversity is universal. It is. In other words, it does not discriminate. It does not limit, it's not limited to one group of people. Everybody hurts. Let me say it again. Everybody hurts. Maybe sometimes, but everybody hurts. No matter your level in society, your skin color, your social background, educational acumen, financial situation, adversity has a way of showing up at your doorstep unannounced and into your life. And it's just happened. And it takes just one day. Just like I said when I was preaching on Job, just one day. It takes just one day. One moment where you can be laughing, and the next you find yourself dealing with a situation so adverse, a loss so great, a pain so intense and so prolonged, you're asking yourself, what can I do? And this is your life. This is my life. Many of you in attendance, whether in person or on social media, are hurting. And you are hurting badly. People may not know that, but you are dealing with some adversity, some hurt, some affliction, and you are hurting, and you are hurting badly, desperately. You find yourself asking this question, how long can I hold on? How long can I hold on? In fact, some of you are at the point where you are beginning to question your relationship with God. Your faith is on the edge and hanging on by a thread. But before you give up and throw in the towel, I think it would be beneficial this morning for us to consult Apostle Paul. So you may ask, why Apostle Paul? And the reason I pick Apostle Paul this morning is because his advice on the matter are not abstract example pulled out of some magazines, some page of a magazine. Apostle Paul has an extensive resume in adversity and suffering that we all can learn from. They are all over the New Testament, but more particularly in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 23 to 27. You want to read his resume with me? He says, I've been exposed to death, not once, again and again. He says, 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. He says, 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. In one of them, I spent a night and a day in the open sea, wondering, am I going to survive? I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst. I have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. And as if that was not enough, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, he told us about the adversity that hurts him the most. He said, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me day and night. I mean, after all that I've just read to you, him being running from house to house because his life is in danger, him being beaten 3 times with a rod, him being shipwrecked, him knowing hunger and thirst and adversity, and he says, beside all that, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment my life. If anyone deserved to be hurt on this particular subject, you would not disagree with me that Apostle Paul is a worthy candidate. Apostle Paul's experience with adversity was vast. It was severe. It was intense. What did he do about it? That's the question. What did he do after all that he went through? Not for himself, for the sake of the gospel. And then for God to allow a messenger of Satan to come and torment him? So what do you do in this situation? What did Apostle Paul do? Well, he says what he did in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8. He said, I took it to the Lord in prayer. He said, I took it to the Lord in prayer. I didn't sit down and have a pity party, not that you doesn't deserve that. I did not go and start murmuring. I did not start talking bad about God. I took it to God himself. I said, what's up, God? What's going on? He took it to God in prayer. And he says, 3 times. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. God, I cannot handle this. Take it away from me. Just like Jesus on the cross says, I cannot bear this cup. If you can, please take it away from me. Apostle Paul said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. I don't think this was 3 prayers before he went to sleep. It was not 3 prayers that says, oh Lord, tonight watch over me. Please. It wasn't a 3 times prayer in the morning while we have to rush to work or to school. Knowing Apostle Paul, I believe this was 3 prolonged periods of praying, constant praying and fasting, seeking God and pleading with God to take this adversity away from him, this thorn that is in the flesh. And the first time Apostle Paul prayed, Apostle Paul prayed and said, God, please take this away from me. God says, okay, you know what? I will. No. He says no. He says no. Paul says, what? And Paul says, okay. He went on. But the torment still continued. The thorn in his flesh, and he cannot bear it anymore. You know it. Have you ever had a toothache that is bothering you at night? A stomach ache? Something constantly, whatever it was Apostle Paul had. It was so unbearable. He says, I got to go to God a second time. I know he said no. And I know his word is yes and amen. But maybe I can change his mind. Maybe I can plead with him. So second time, he went to a hotel and said, I'm taking a week off. I'm taking 2 weeks off. He went on his belly before God without food and crying to God. And God says, no. Says, okay, he went home again. Went with, you've never had an ache, something that bothers you, like my shoulders. You live with it, but you're never the same person again. You want to work out, but every time you go to the gym, you're ready, and then you're about to lift something. You're about to pick something up. It could be any kind of pain. Every moment it reminds you that it's there. And Apostle Paul says, listen, I'm going to God a third time. And he took time and pleaded with the Lord a third time. And God said, Paul, my answer is still no. 3 times. God refused to remove the thorns. 3 times. God said no. So now the obvious question is, how can the God for whom nothing is impossible say no to his hurting children? How can the God for whom nothing is impossible say no to his hurting children? How can the God who answers prayer says no, not once, not twice, 3 times? He says in his word, after all, the prayer of a righteous person is effective. He says, knock and the door shall be open to you. Paul says, I knocked 3 times. And I know my prayers were effective because he answered me. But his answer was no the first time, no the second time, no the third time. How can God be a God of love and watch his children suffer and not take it away from them? How can God say he wants the best for me and you and say no to his hardest working, most loyal servant in the New Testament? I assume Paul said, God, if you take this thorn away from me, I will have more time to preach the gospel. So take it away. God says, no. Preach the gospel with your hurt. Preach the gospel with the thorn. He said, second time, he said, God, if you take it away from me, I can write more books. I can write one better than Romans. God says no. Oh, okay, God, okay, God. But if you take it away from me, I can go on more missionary journeys. Because sometimes I have to take some times off. But I can go to more missionary journeys and build more churches. Isn't it what you said? I will build my church. I can help you do that. God said, thanks. Continue to do that. But the answer is still no. But Paul says, instead of taking it away from me, this is what God said. My grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in your weakness. My grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Wow. Really, God? Your grace is sufficient for me. That's why you're not taking my thorn away. That's why you're not taking this adversity. Let me ask you this question, and be honest with yourself. And I'll try my best to be honest with myself. How many of us would be willing to suffer the greatest of trials, intense adversity, if it would mean God's strength would be made perfect in what you're going through? Be honest with yourself. I'm trying to be honest with myself. How many of us will want to suffer the greatest trials, intense adversity, a thorn in our flesh, and said, you know what? I will walk with the thorn. I will continue on because His grace, if His grace is made perfect in my weakness, that's good enough for me. If God says my grace is sufficient for you, what He's saying is, when I am all you have left, I'm enough. I'm enough. I'm enough in your pain. I'm enough. I guess what happened next is that Apostle Paul asked, if you're not going to take this away from me, then why don't you tell me why? I mean, just think about it. Okay, God, it's good, it's awesome that you pray to God and He answers you. It's bad that He says no. You feel bad that He says no, especially while you're hurting. But the next question is, if you're not going to take it away from me, then at least tell me why. See, the great theologian and reformer Martin Luther once wrote, if you want to advance in faith, you have to crucify the question why. If you want to advance in faith, you have to crucify the question why. As much as I admire Martin Luther, I think he was dead wrong on this one. And I believe the reason he says that is because many Christians, we feel guilty when we ask God why. Why this? Why that? Why me? This might take you by surprise, but let me tell you this. God is not afraid or insulted by your why. God is not afraid or insulted by your why. You know why? Your adversity might take you by surprise, but not God. He knew you would be facing with the adversity you are dealing with before you were even born. He knew it. And He also knew you were going to ask Him why at some point. Because this is a natural response to adversity. Why me? Why this? Why that? How can you tell somebody they can't ask why? Well, they are hurting. I want to know why I'm hurting. In fact, I'm absolutely convinced it is a big mistake not to ask God why. Because if you don't ask God why, you may never get the answer. I mean, David, the man after God's own heart, asked God why, didn't he? Have you read the Psalms? David, the man after God's own heart, asked God why. Why me? Why this? Why now? Why that? In fact, Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, on the cross, cried out, Eli, Eli, Lama sabachthani. My God, why? Why have you forsaken me, your Son, Your only begotten Son. Isn't it tough? Sometimes you are in the middle of your trials, middle of your adversity, and it seems like God is nowhere to be found. Seems like you are completely forsaken. And this is at this moment, like David, like Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, I invite you to take it to the Lord in prayer and ask him, why God? It's not, no, don't crucify. Why? You need to ask why. Why? Because Jesus asked why. The only thing I want to caution you about is when you begin to think that God owes you an answer. See, that's the problem here. Yeah, you could ask why, but don't think God owes you an answer. Because he can show up like he did with Job and says, who are you? Who are you asking me why? Where were you when I was? He can. There are times when you ask God why, he may give you an answer. But there are times when you ask God why, he may not. And you know what? Doesn't have to. But in the case of Apostle Paul, God did answer him. God did answer his why. I would just go straight to the why, but I have to lead it to the why. So read with me in 2 Corinthians and see. Paul says, God tell me why he would not do it. He says, the reason is because I know a man, and in Christ, who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. He says, whether it was in the body or out of the body, I do not know. Only God knows. And I know that this man was caught up in paradise and heard inexpressible things that no one is permitted to tell. And because of this surpassingly great revelation, here it is. Therefore, because of this great things, because we only want, if God takes you to the third heaven, just think about that. And for you to hear things in heaven that ears should not hear. What a great experience. But this is why God gave me the thorn in my flesh and told me he would not take it away. In order to keep me from becoming what? Conceited. God did not take away the thorn from Apostle Paul because after you see something like this, it could bring pride into your life. God kept the thorn in his life, did not take it away. God said no in order to keep me from becoming conceited. I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. From this answer, can you see that adversity, though painful, is not always a bad thing for the Christian? Can you see that? It's not always a bad thing. There can be some benefit to adversity in the life of those who walk with the Lord. First, it was given to Apostle Paul, it was given to me in order to keep me from becoming conceited, in order to keep me from becoming self-centered, egotistic. Those are all synonyms of what he says, conceited, self-centered, egotistic, proud, arrogant, and cocky. Because God opposes the proud. Because if you become prideful, you lose God's grace. And God's grace is the most important thing in the life of a Christian. So sometimes God allows adversity in your life and refuses to take it away, not because he doesn't care, not because he does not love you, but because he wants to protect you from you. Sometimes God's put a limit to you. Yes, he gave you a small, beautiful house, and you dream to have a mansion. But God knows that will make you cocky, conceited. You won't have time for church anymore, nor for Bible study. He puts a limit to it to save you from you. This is what this tells me. There are going to be some trials, adversities, setback, pain, hurt in your life. And you will ask God to take it away, and he will say, no, can do, but won't do. You may pray, fast, get your friends on the phone at church. Don't we do that all the time? And pray and fast for me. Even beg God. We can even have the church lay hands on us. And God's answer will still be no. And this should teach you something about God. Even if it takes pain, hardship, suffering, bleeding, persecution, and sorrow in order to protect you and me, God will not hesitate to allow it to happen to you, nor will he take it away. I mean, that's something you and I can relate to, don't we? Can't we? How many times I take my children to the doctors to get hurt by the doctors, and they were crying while they were sitting on my lap. But because I knew it was good for them, because I knew whatever the doctor was going to do was for their good, it was going to protect them, I let the doctor hurt them. I did not say, well, we're not going. Mommy is the one who usually put the appointment. I didn't say, well, let's act like we're going to the appointment, but let's not go. And when we come back, we'll tell Mom we went, because I don't want you to get hurt, honey. No, I know it's for their good, and I know it's for their protection, and God knows it's for your good, and God knows it's for your protection. So some of you are hurting, and you are hurting badly. I don't know what you are going through, but this I know. If God says it, I believe it. His grace is sufficient for you, because his strength is made perfect in whatever thorn, whatever adversity you are facing. You know what? Some of us may still ask God, if you love me, you would take this away from me. You know, I don't think they like when I do that, but not too long ago, Priscilla came to me and asked me to go somewhere. I said yes. And she came and asked for another thing. I said yes. And then I pulled her aside. I said, when I say no, I want you to receive it the same way. Because the yes are always with a great smile. I'm not just saying no because I'm saying no. I'm saying no for a reason that you may not know. I'm your dad. I'm there to protect you. That's what God is saying to you. And that's what God is saying to me. There was a fascinating hypothetical exercise that was ran by the psychologist Jonathan Haidt. This is what happened. He got some participants and he handed them a summary of a person's life and asked them to read it over. And he told the participant to imagine that this person was their child. And this is that person's unavoidable life story. They haven't been born yet. This child that you're looking at their life story, they haven't been born yet, but they will be born soon. And this is where their lives are headed. So what he did, he gave the participant 5 minutes and said, you can edit your child's story, the one you have in your hand. Eraser in hand, he says they could eliminate whatever they wanted out of their child's life. And the question for the participant was, what do you erase? And what do you erase first? I mean, most of us would instinctively and frantically begin to erase Down syndrome, learning disability, car accident, unplanned pregnancy, financial challenges. If we see these things in the life of the children we love, those are the things that I think we would erase. We love our children, don't we? We want them to live a life without those hardships, without pain, and without setbacks. And if we could see it ahead of time and we had the power to erase it, like us, God too would prefer his children's life to be free from pain and anguish. But ask yourself, is that really what's best for you? Is that really what's best for your child? What if you erase a hardship that was going to show them how to be joyful and not bitter in spite of any circumstances? And then because you took that away, you erased that, they never learn that, and they live a life of bitterness. What if you erase some pain and suffering that would end up being the catalyst God uses in their lives to cause them to come and crawl to him and cry out to him? What if you erase a difficult circumstance that would wake them up to God's purpose in their lives? Understand this. As human, we should ask God why. And that's because we don't know why he allows adversity in your life. If you were to take this sentence and say, God allows adversity in your life because. If I were to take it as your pastor and said to you, Alan, said to you, Angie, said to you, Jan, God allows adversity in your life because, guess what I would have to put? ... I can't finish this sentence. I don't know why God allows you to go through what you go through. But what I can tell you is this. I know God allowed adversity in the life of Paul to protect him from himself. That's what the Bible told me. To keep him from becoming conceited and losing out on God's blessing for his life. But this is what I can tell you. I know God allowed adversity in the life of Job to protect him from the devil. That I can tell you. I know God allowed adversity in the life of Joseph because through Joseph, he wanted to save an entire nation. Through his adversity and his hurt and his imprisonment, God wanted to save an entire nation. Do you want God to erase that? Do you want God to erase him being thrown in a hole? Do you want God to erase the fact that he was sold in slavery? Do you want God to erase that Potiphar's wife lied on him and he ended up in jail? Do you want God to erase the hardship of the jail cell that brought him to be the second man in command in Egypt, so that when the nation of Israel needed a place to find food because of the famine, an entire nation can be saved? Which one of your adversity do you want God to erase? Because the adversity that you hate the most is the one God may use to save the United States of America. I may not know why God allows your adversity, but I know God. I know, one, he will never give you more than you can bear. That's what he says. I know he's a present help in times of trouble. I know he cares for you, and no matter how intense or hard your adversity is, his strength is made perfect in your weakness. And when you are weak, it is then you are strong in the God who gave you strength. And I know he will give you enough strength to endure the hardship you are going through. So what is my advice to you? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not onto your own understanding. I know it hurts. I know it's been long. In all your ways, acknowledge him, because he has your best interests at heart.
Amen. Such an on-time word for everyone's circumstances, everyone's difficulty, all of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day. God knows why. We may never know until we get to see him face to face. When he replays, when he rolls the videotape and shows us the whys to the why. So until then, we can only trust him in hope that all that comes our way is for our good. For that, we can always run to the Father with our pains, our concerns, our sorrows. We can always turn to God. Run to the Father. I carry the burden for too long on mine. I wasn't created to bear it. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, I'm laying it down. I know that I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again, and again and again. Oh, 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 run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Whoa.
Yes. When Apostle Paul was dealing with the thorn in his flesh, he came to God. He took it to the Lord in prayer. Yes, God did say no. But he kept on praying until God told him why. There are whys behind God knows. There are reasons when he says no. I know. You never thought you would be going through a divorce. You never saw it coming. You didn't plan for it. I told you, adversity comes without warning, like a surprise party. You never thought that you would lose trust, that your trust would be violated, losing your home, burying a loved one at an unexpected time, or being fired from your job. And I'm not saying those things don't hurt. They hurt. And that's the reason why Apostle Paul went to God 3 times. But one thing you need to know is that God can take the mess in your life and turn it to a message. God is enough. His grace is sufficient for you. When you are weak, then you are strong. I remember the story as I end of a mother who had a child, and she refuses to come to the mother often. But the grandfather came one day and saw the child was sick. And he says, "Oh, she's sick. Oh my God, what are you going to do? How can we heal her?" The mother said, "You know, I don't like it when she's sick, but in some ways I kind of love it. Because when she's sick, she only stays on my lap. And I love that." See, when you are weak, you run to God in prayer. And there you can have intimacy with Him. Intimacy you never would have known without that thorn in your flesh. And know this for sure. In all things, God works for those who love Him. He works all things together for those who love Him, to those who are called according to His purpose. God has not forgotten you. He's not done with you yet. He has a message in the midst of your mess. God bless you. May His face shine upon you, and may He give you peace.